Vanessa sat motionless on the cold tiled floor of her apartment long after the call had ended. The room that had once made her feel successful suddenly felt painfully empty. The designer handbags arranged neatly on the shelves no longer looked like trophies. Instead, they reminded her of every decision that had brought her to this moment. Her phone rested in her trembling hands. She stared at Lucas's contact. Her thumb hovered over the call button several times before pulling away. "What exactly am I going to tell him?" she whispered to herself. "I'm sorry I left you because I thought another man's money would make me happier." She laughed bitterly through her tears. "No. Even I wouldn't believe that apology." She buried her face in her hands. For the first time in years, Vanessa wasn't thinking about luxury holidays or expensive restaurants. She was thinking about consequences. The following morning, Lagos woke to another busy weekday. Yellow buses filled the roads before sunrise, traders arranged their goods along the roadside, and office workers hurried toward their destinations with cups of hot coffee in their hands. Inside Knight Holdings, the atmosphere was already buzzing. Corporate strategy had another major review scheduled before the upcoming board meeting. Amara arrived a few minutes earlier than usual. As always, she greeted the security officers with a warm smile. "Good morning." "Morning, Madam Amara." One of the older security guards smiled proudly. "You people don't ever rest." She laughed softly. "Not when Mrs. Knight is expecting reports." The guard shook his head. "That woman can make even directors afraid." Amara smiled. "She's demanding. But she's fair." The security guard chuckled. "You always defend her." "Because it's true." She entered the building. Upstairs, Lucas was already seated inside his office. A thick file lay open before him, yet he hadn't read a single page. His thoughts wandered elsewhere. There was a gentle knock. "Come in." His secretary, Miss Daniels, entered. "Good morning, sir." "Morning." She placed several documents on his desk. "These require your approval." Lucas nodded absent-mindedly. She hesitated before speaking again. "Sir." "Yes. I've noticed you've been reviewing corporate strategy reports almost every day." Lucas looked up. "So?" She smiled politely. "Nothing, sir. I just found it unusual." Lucas realized she was right. Only a few months ago, he barely paid attention to reports prepared outside his own department. Now, every document prepared by corporate strategy somehow found its way onto his desk. More specifically, every report prepared by Amara. He cleared his throat. "That will be all." "Yes, sir." After she left, Lucas leaned back in his chair. "What exactly am I doing?" he muttered. He opened Amara's latest report. Once again, every section was organized. Every assumption properly referenced. Every recommendation supported with evidence. He smiled unconsciously. Still as thorough as ever. Meanwhile, inside corporate strategy, Mrs. Knight entered the conference room exactly at 9 o'clock. Everyone immediately stood. "Good morning, Ma." "Sit." She looked around the table. "Today's objective is simple. Our expansion proposal returns to the board next week. I expect every projection to survive independent scrutiny." She looked directly at Amara. "Miss Okafor." "Yes, Ma." "You revised the revenue segmentation model?" "Yes, Ma." "Were the regional assumptions recalculated?" "Yes." "The sensitivity analysis?" "Completed." Mrs. Knight nodded. "Present it." Amara stood and walked confidently to the screen. Unlike the nervous young woman who had entered corporate strategy weeks earlier, she now carried herself with quiet confidence. She spoke calmly. Our previous model treated all expansion locations equally. She changed the slide. The revised model groups locations according to commercial activity, customer behavior, and average transaction values. Several executives nodded while taking notes. She continued. For example, a branch located inside Ikeja's commercial district experiences completely different customer traffic from one located in a residential suburb. She highlighted another chart. Population alone does not determine revenue. Consumer behavior does. Mrs. Knight watched silently. One senior analyst interrupted. What happens if residential spending exceeds expectations? Amara smiled. We included optimistic and conservative scenarios. She displayed another slide. Even under optimistic conditions, the projections remain realistic. The room became quiet. Finally, Mrs. Knight closed her notebook. This, she looked around the table, is how analysis should be done. No unnecessary praise. No exaggerated compliments. Just one sentence. Yet everyone in the room understood exactly what it meant. Amara had earned Mrs. Knight's respect. And inside Knight Holdings, that was one of the rarest achievements anyone could accomplish. Across the city, Vanessa walked into the luxury apartment she could no longer afford. The property manager was already waiting. Good afternoon, madam. She forced a smile. Afternoon. I came regarding the rent renewal. Vanessa swallowed nervously. Can we discuss it? The manager handed her a document. I'm afraid the owner's instructions are clear. The new rent takes effect next month. Vanessa stared at the amount again. It was almost impossible. There has to be some mistake. There isn't. She tried smiling. I've lived here for over a year. And we've appreciated having you. But these are the new terms. She lowered her voice. Is there any discount? The manager shook his head apologetically. I'm sorry. After he left, Vanessa slowly sat on the expensive leather sofa. Everything around her suddenly felt borrowed. Because it was. Later that afternoon, she decided to sell the luxury SUV her boyfriend had bought. She drove to a high-end automobile dealership. A sales consultant inspected the vehicle carefully. It's in excellent condition. Vanessa smiled weakly. So you'll buy it? The consultant looked through the ownership documents. His expression changed immediately. I'm sorry, madam. What? This vehicle isn't registered in your name. She frowned. What do you mean? The legal owner is someone else. Her heart sank. She already knew who. Without ownership, she couldn't even sell the car. Another door had closed. That evening, Vanessa finally gathered enough courage. She pressed Lucas's number. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then. Hello. Lucas answered calmly. She froze. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally. Lucas. Her voice cracked. It's me. I know. Another silence followed. She struggled to find the words. Can we meet? Lucas didn't answer immediately. What for? I need to talk to you. His voice remained polite. You can talk now. She closed her eyes. I'd rather say it in person. Lucas looked through the glass walls of his office toward the Lagos skyline. He remembered everything. The restaurant. The insults. The humiliation. The confession. You said everything you wanted to say the last time we met. Vanessa's tears returned. I know. I was wrong. Lucas remained silent. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve another chance. She could barely breathe. But please. Just meet me once. I need you to hear me. Lucas finally spoke. I have a meeting tomorrow evening. She immediately interrupted. I'll wait. I don't care how long. I'll wait. Lucas sighed quietly. Fine. Tomorrow. 6 o'clock. I'll only give you a few minutes. Before she could thank him, the line went dead. Vanessa lowered the phone slowly. For the first time since everything fell apart, she felt a tiny glimmer of hope. She convinced herself that perhaps Lucas still loved her enough to forgive her. She had no idea that the man she was hoping to win back was no longer the same man she had walked away from. Elsewhere, Lucas placed his phone on the desk. His assistant entered. Sir. He looked up. Yes. Mrs. Knight requested tomorrow's strategic review. Lucas nodded. I'll be there. She hesitated. And Miss Okafor has already submitted her presentation. Lucas smiled unconsciously. Of course she has. After the secretary left, Lucas remained seated quietly. He realized something that surprised even him. When Vanessa called, he had felt sympathy. But not longing. Not regret. Not love. Yet somehow, the simple mention of Amara's name had made him smile without even thinking. Lucas slowly leaned back in his chair. What is happening to me? Outside his office window, the lights of Lagos stretched endlessly into the night, while somewhere else in the same city, two women were thinking about the same man for completely different reasons. One wanted him back because she had lost everything. The other wanted nothing from him at all. And sometimes, life had a way of rewarding the heart that never asked for anything in return. The following day arrived with the familiar energy of Lagos. Traffic built up before sunrise. Street vendors arranged trays of hot akara, puff-puff, roasted corn, and steaming cups of tea for commuters rushing to work. Inside Knight Holdings, however, another kind of pressure filled the air. It was the day before the board's final review of the expansion proposal. Every department was working against the clock. Amara arrived at exactly 7:45 a.m., nearly an hour before the official start of work. She greeted the receptionist with her usual warm smile. Good morning. The receptionist smiled back. Morning, Miss Okafor. You've become the earliest person in this building. Amara laughed softly. I'd rather arrive early than keep Mrs. Knight waiting. The receptionist chuckled. I don't think anybody wants to keep that woman waiting. Both women laughed before Amara headed toward the elevators. As she walked through the quiet hallway, she noticed the cleaning staff still polishing the marble floors. One elderly cleaner smiled proudly. Good morning, my daughter. Morning, Mama Grace. You've started coming earlier these days. Amara smiled. Work is increasing. Mama Grace nodded knowingly. When God opens a bigger door, He also gives bigger responsibilities. Amara paused. I hope so. No hope. The elderly woman smiled warmly. I've worked in this company for 23 years. I've watched many people come and go. She looked directly at Amara. Hard work always speaks. It may whisper at first. But eventually, it becomes impossible to ignore. Amara smiled gratefully. Thank you. Those simple words stayed with her long after she entered her office. At exactly 8:30, Mrs. Knight walked into corporate strategy carrying a thin leather folder. Everyone immediately stood. Good morning, Ma. Morning. She looked around the room. I've reviewed last night's revisions. She placed the folder on the conference table. There are still weaknesses. Several executives exchanged nervous glances. Mrs. Knight continued. The weaknesses aren't in the calculations. They're in the assumptions. She turned toward Amara. Miss Okafor. Yes, Ma. If fuel prices increase by another 15% over the next 12 months, what happens to customer spending? Amara answered almost immediately. Discretionary spending will reduce. Mrs. Knight nodded. And revenue projections for premium locations should be adjusted downward. Mrs. Knight folded her arms. By how much? Amara walked toward the screen. If inflation follows the current trend. She displayed another chart. Our existing model overestimates premium retail demand by approximately 8%. One senior manager looked surprised. You recalculated that overnight? Amara nodded. I couldn't ignore it. Mrs. Knight remained expressionless. Good. She turned toward the rest of the team. This is exactly why assumptions must constantly be challenged. She looked back at Amara. Prepare an alternative scenario. I want both models presented to the board. Yes, Ma. Meanwhile, Lucas sat inside his office reviewing another stack of reports. His secretary entered carrying a tablet. Sir. Yes. Mrs. Knight has requested your attendance at tomorrow's board meeting. I'll be there. She hesitated. There is something else. Lucas looked up. The revised expansion model. It's impressive. Lucas smiled faintly. I've already read it. The segmentation approach. Yes. The sensitivity analysis. Also. She laughed quietly. I had a feeling. Lucas closed the file. The quality of the work speaks for itself. His secretary nodded before leaving. Lucas looked down at the name printed on the report. Prepared by Amara Okafor. He stared at it for several seconds. Months ago, he had viewed her simply as an efficient executive assistant. Now, he wondered how he had failed to notice everything else she was capable of. That afternoon, 6 o'clock arrived. Lucas parked outside a quiet waterfront cafe overlooking the Lagos Lagoon. It was far away from the busy business district. He wanted privacy. A few minutes later, Vanessa arrived. She looked different. The confidence she once carried so effortlessly had disappeared. Even her expensive clothes could no longer hide the exhaustion written across her face. She walked slowly toward him. Thank you for coming. Lucas nodded politely. You said you wanted to talk. She sat opposite him. For a while. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Vanessa broke the silence. I've replayed everything that happened between us hundreds of times. Lucas remained quiet. I was arrogant. I was selfish. I thought money could solve every problem. Her eyes slowly filled with tears. I had someone who genuinely loved me. Lucas looked out across the water. I know. She lowered her head. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I finally understand what I threw away. Lucas listened patiently. She continued. When I left you, I thought I was choosing a better life. She laughed bitterly. I wasn't. I was chasing an illusion. Lucas finally looked at her. The man you left me for. What happened? Vanessa smiled painfully. He was married. Lucas wasn't surprised. He told me he was divorced. He lied. She wiped away a tear. When his wife found out about us, everything collapsed. The accounts were frozen. The businesses disappeared. The apartment. The car. None of it was actually mine. Lucas remained silent. She took a deep breath. I deserve everything that happened. Lucas didn't argue. Instead, he quietly asked, "So, why did you really ask to see me?" Vanessa hesitated. Then she answered honestly. "Because I wanted another chance." Lucas looked at her calmly. "A chance to do what?" "Start again." She reached across the table. "This time, I'll do things differently." Lucas gently moved his hand away before she could touch it. Her heart immediately sank. He spoke quietly. "Vanessa, there was a time when I would have done absolutely anything to hear those words." She looked at him hopefully. "But that time has passed." Her eyes widened. "I don't understand." Lucas smiled sadly. "When you left, I blamed myself. I thought I wasn't enough. I questioned everything." He paused. "But eventually, I realized something. You didn't leave because I lacked anything. You left because what you wanted was different from what I could ever become." Vanessa shook her head desperately. "I was wrong." "I know." Lucas nodded. "You were." She began crying openly. "Please. Don't let one mistake destroy everything." Lucas sighed. "It wasn't one mistake. It was a series of choices. You chose another man. You lied. You manipulated me. You deliberately destroyed an innocent person's reputation." He looked directly into her eyes. "Do you remember Amara?" Vanessa lowered her head immediately. Lucas continued. "You knew she had done nothing wrong. You still lied about her. Because protecting yourself mattered more." Vanessa couldn't respond. "The consequences of those lies didn't only affect me. They affected someone who had always been loyal." She whispered. "I'm sorry." Lucas nodded. "I believe you are." Another silence followed. Then Lucas stood. "I truly hope your life gets better. I mean that. But I can't go back." Vanessa felt the last piece of hope disappear. "So, that's it?" Lucas smiled gently. "Sometimes, the hardest lesson life teaches us is that not every broken relationship can be repaired." He placed enough money on the table to cover both drinks. Then he walked away. Vanessa remained seated alone, watching him disappear into the evening crowd. This time, he didn't look back. Not once. Elsewhere, inside Night Holdings, Amara remained in the office finishing one final presentation. The cleaning staff had already begun locking unused meeting rooms. She stretched her arms before saving the final document. Just then, a notification appeared on her computer. "Board review presentation approved." She smiled quietly. Another message followed almost immediately. From Mrs. Knight. "Excellent revisions. Be prepared to present tomorrow." That was all. No unnecessary praise. No long congratulations. Just 2 short sentences. Yet coming from Mrs. Knight, those words meant more than an entire page of compliments. Amara leaned back in her chair and smiled to herself. She had no idea that at that exact moment, Lucas was walking away from his past. Without fully realizing it, he was also walking toward a future that would challenge his heart in ways no business negotiation, board meeting, or corporate victory ever could. For the first time in many months, his decisions were no longer being shaped by guilt over Vanessa. Instead, They were slowly being shaped by admiration for a woman who had never demanded his attention, yet had quietly earned his respect through integrity, intelligence, and unwavering character. The next morning, Knight Holdings felt different. The atmosphere inside the headquarters was unusually tense. Today wasn't an ordinary workday. It was board meeting day. Every senior executive understood what that meant. Multi-billionaire decisions would be made before noon. Expansion plans. Investment approvals. Budget reallocations. Every presentation had to be flawless. There would be no room for mistakes. By 7:15 a.m., the executive boardroom was already being prepared. The housekeeping team carefully arranged bottles of water beside each leather chair. The IT department tested the presentation screens one final time. Assistants walked in and out carrying neatly arranged briefing folders. Outside the boardroom, several managers quietly reviewed their notes. No one wanted to be the first person Mrs. Knight questioned without an answer. Amara arrived wearing a navy blue tailored suit that reflected quiet professionalism. She carried her laptop bag in one hand and a slim folder under the other arm. As she entered the lobby, the receptionist smiled. "Good morning, Miss Okafor." "Morning. You look ready." Amara laughed softly. "I hope I am." The receptionist leaned closer. "Everyone is saying today's presentation will determine whether the expansion project moves forward." Amara smiled politely. "That's for the board to decide." She pressed the elevator button. As the doors opened, another familiar voice called her. "Morning." She turned. Lucas stepped inside the elevator. He was holding several board files. "Good morning, sir." The elevator doors closed. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Then Lucas looked toward her. "Nervous?" She smiled honestly. "A little. That's normal." She nodded. "I've presented reports before. But never directly before the full board." Lucas smiled. "You'll do well." She looked surprised. "You sound very certain." "I am." She blinked. "Why?" Lucas answered without hesitation. "Because you never present opinions. You present facts. And facts are much harder to challenge." Amara smiled. "Thank you." The elevator reached the executive floor. As they stepped out together, several employees noticed them walking side by side. Whispers immediately started. "Look! Isn't that Mr. Knight? And Miss Okafor? I thought they barely spoke anymore. They've been talking quite often lately." Another employee shook his head. "Whatever it is, it's definitely different." Neither Lucas nor Amara paid